Rugby is known for being tough, but let's talk about a battle that happens off the pitch.
Are LGBTQ plus players really welcome in the sport?
On this episode of the Gay Rugby Podcast, we're tackling the biggest myths about being queer in the rugby community.
Let's get ready to rug.
Ozzy,
Jack.
what's going on?
Not much, man. We're at it again.
We are at it again.
Episode 2, guys. Episode 2. So if you're here, that means that you liked what you saw, episode 1. And so
Or the
back.
algorithm fed you a completely new video and you have no idea what the context is or who we are or what we're talking about.
That's true. In which case, go back and watch episode 1.
Yes, please watch episode 1. But for those of you who are just tuning in, this is the Gay Rugby Podcast, where we talk about inclusivity in rugby and our personal experiences joining gay rugby teams and traveling the world with the international
Gay rugby community.
Yeah. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Homophobia.
Ugh,
Gross.
disgusting.
There's a lot of that going around right now.
There is, unfortunately. There's a lot of phobia going around right now.
Yes. In general.
And so we want to address some of the stereotypes that our community endures.
Yeah.
And maybe shed some light for you guys out there that may be a little hazy about what gay rugby is. And if any of those stereotypes are true and why they're not true. And then misconceptions, obviously.
And then we also wanted to shed a spotlight on some professional athletes who have taken the leap and come out to not just their friends and family, but out professionally to their teammates and to their fans, and the impact that has on the younger generation, but then also that it's had on their career as well.
We're going to talk about gay athletes in general or gay rugby athletes?
Both.
Okay.
If you know any gay athletes.
I mean, there's some athletes that have come out. There's one football
Is
player.
there that football player that's really hot?
A football player came out. And
What's his name?
Sam, right? Michael Sam?
Oh. I thought it was Chase.
There may be another one.
There's a really cute football player that came out as gay and has a cute boyfriend.
Oh,
Or maybe am I
yes.
dreaming about all this?
No, that sounds familiar.
Okay, sorry.
That's recent, right?
That's more recent, yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking it up. We're going to find out what this guy's name is, and we're going to let you guys know.
Oh, Carl Nassib.
Oh, Carl.
Michael Sam, that's the one I mentioned. That's who I was talking about. But Carl Nassib is more recent.
Carl.
Carl! That reminds me of TWD. I don't know if I can say it.
Honestly, I mean, coming out as a gay rugby player is one thing, but coming out as gay in the NFL is like a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, just my experience, rugby, even playing with straight teams, like everyone's pretty welcoming and inclusive, and just doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah. I mean, they
you can
don't.
be who you
like,
want to be.
Yeah, especially if you hit them hard. They're like, oh, okay, he's here to play.
Yeah. But coming out in the NFL,
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
that's a big deal. There's not a lot of out football players.
No, there isn't. And I think maybe basketball had a player that came out, but he came out after retirement. But basketball is another sport where you don't hear about it because it's not okay, you know?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But you do have very vocal and supportive parents that have children that are part of the community, like Dwayne Wade, Magic Johnson, just to name a couple. I mean, there's plenty others, but those are the top 2 that come to my head.
And can we go back to Carl for a second? 'Cause
Sure.
That's the one that I'm familiar with.
That's the one you want to talk about. Let's be honest.
Well, I think he came out after he retired, right?
He did. I do not know. I don't know. So maybe you can
We're not sure,
enlighten us.
but I'm pretty sure that he came out after retirement. And I just want to talk about why that is. Why
Actually,
no?
no. So
What?
yeah, it
That's exciting.
says that in 2021, Nassib became the first openly gay active player in the NFL.
Let's go.
Although Michael Sam was in 2014, I feel like, he came out publicly before the NFL draft.
Before the
That's
NFL
the
draft.
difference.
Did that affect his drafting?
I'm sure it did.
His playtime?
I remember looking at like the news and stuff like that, and they were asking athletes like, "Oh, what are your thoughts on Michael Sam if he came to play with your team? If would you be comfortable in the locker room with him and stuff like that?" So I remember it was a big deal, and I'm sure that it had an effect on the decision making up at the top, whether they would be drafting him or not. Now, I don't know his stats as a player. I don't know what caliber of a player he was. But I think if he was like a first, second, or third rounder, I think that would have affected the decision making, I would assume.
Yeah, for sure. Because in the NFL, it's also very like political and capitalistly driven. Like there's a lot of money and there's a lot of brands that are involved. And so I feel like if someone was conservative and owning a football team, they wouldn't want an openly gay player, at least not the first one. They're not sure how people are going to react. Obviously, we've made a lot of strides in the past 50 years. It does kind of feel like we're going backwards now. But it would definitely play a part, especially 10 years ago?
Yeah. That's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
I also would like to mention that Jason Collins in 2013 was the first openly gay player in a major professional team to come out.
Okay. What team?
For the Washington Wizards.
Never heard of them.
You never heard of the Washington Wizards?
Never heard. What sport is that?
Basketball.
Basketball. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. And then I guess Derek Gordon is currently the only openly gay professional basketball player on an active roster.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting facts, right?
Those are all really interesting facts. Yeah.
Yeah. But it takes one person to make that leap, and it kind of cracks that door open so that other players feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
And then, the floodgates open, and then you start realizing like there's a lot more gay players in sports than we actually know of.
Yeah. Well, sexuality is like a spectrum, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like everything else, the terms continue to evolve.
Yeah.
There's people that identify as bisexual, people
Sure.
that identify as heterosexual, gay. And so there's a lot of fluidity, I feel like, especially in the younger generation, where they don't necessarily want to be labeled a certain thing. And they're just like, I'm just here to have a good time, which I really like.
You know what? I think that it's some of these trailblazers, some of these athletes, older athletes, who have kind of led the way it's just so brave. It's so inspiring when a professional athlete comes out, not just to their friends and family, but to their team and to their fans.
On a national stage.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't understand or underestimate is the weight that comes with doing something like that. Mm-hmm. Because when you're a heterosexual man or woman, you don't have to introduce your sexuality to anyone. You just exist as a person.
Yeah.
And so when you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, you have to come out your entire life to people. I don't know why that matters, but you have to continuously tell people, this is who I am, this is how I identify, or and that's something that heterosexual people do not have to deal with, you know?
Yeah. But that's why I think it's so incredibly brave and important for gay, lesbian, trans role models to exist in sports and in athletics.
Yeah, we need that visibility, you know?
Especially on the national stage, like you said, but then also the global stage.
Exactly.
I know rugby isn't the biggest sport here in the United States. And that's why we've kind of been talking about a lot of other sports and athletes right now. But I don't know why that matters. I was just talking, and now my dog's here. Yes, bunny.
He's so cute.
He's so cute.
He's like, I want to be part of this.
Yeah, it's okay. You're a good boy. But yeah, so cool. So brave of these people. One athlete that I wanted to talk about, his Instagram handle is actually the Gay Rugger, Devin Ibanez. Devin Ibanez is an openly gay rugby player and activist who I actually happened to go to high school with.
Oh,
yeah.
that's a fun fact.
Fun fact. A friend of mine used to date his sister. And his sister is actually now married to a woman as well. So it's just a big gay world, right? Like,
Were you at the wedding?
I was not at the wedding.
Oh, that's not
But
okay.
Devin Ibanez did come to a couple of Los Angeles Rebellion Rugby Club practices a couple years ago, as well as a beach rugby day that we had. And it was great to talk with him and connect about rugby, but also, you know, our past and our history. And so that was really cool to talk to him and also see how being openly gay has kind of affected their rugby career, but they've also really embraced that identity, and they are a big advocate for gay visibility and gay inclusion, LGBTQ plus inclusion in sports. So big shout out to Devin Ibanez.
Kudos. People look at rugby as a hyper masculine, rugged, tough sport.
Yep.
And so I think the assumption and the stereotype of the average rugby player is that of a macho man, for lack of a better word. But in reality, it's not the case.
There is such a diverse array of like personalities. We have like femme queens who will put you in the ground, and like butch dudes.
Yeah, you're right. There's players, you know, that are like 6'4", 250, running guys into the ground, and then at the third half, you'll see them in high heels and like heavy jewelry, just like having the time of their life, drinking beers with everyone. And
actually, there's a guy on our team who always will wear glitter and eye mascara.
Yeah.
And is like one of the like toughest,
toughest players.
Man, always has the cutest socks, like gay socks, and it's just so inspiring to see people being themselves and expressing themselves. You know, with the way that they dress, but also the way that they play rugby. Yeah,
I mean, if you went and watched the game from the sideline, you'd have one idea of what these players might be, but then you see them after, and it totally just like blows your mind away because everyone gets into their outfits and out of the kit, and they're a different person, you know?
Like, for example, at the Bingham Cup this past year, there was the trans and non-binary match. It was a historic moment where I think it was the first ever all trans / non-binary
match,
like rugby match, ever.
And it was televised. I remember the cameras.
It was televised as well. And it was just so inspiring to see some of our teammates, but also other players from around the world playing in that match and really shattering the stereotypes, not just of what a rugby player is, but of what it means to be queer.
Yeah, and like we mentioned before, like visibility is important, right?
Yep.
And so this being televised was a big moment because now people that are tuning in are watching this and they know that these people exist, right? Like we exist, we all exist. They may not know us personally or see us knowingly, but we're there. And I think that's important too.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the locker room.
Ooh, my favorite.
We don't have a locker room in
We
LA.
don't. Our locker room is the side of the field.
Yeah,
Behind
half
the bleachers.
Behind the bleachers. Half the time, I'm like stripping down to my underwear, just
Yeah.
put my rugby shorts on before practice.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk more about like the idea of locker room culture. And I know that at least growing up, I was in more locker room spaces. And there's a lot of homophobia, but also like homo that disguises itself as like homoeroticism sometimes in the locker room.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
There's a very blurred line there for sure.
Very blurred line.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like that's true with like any sport, you know?
Yeah.
I remember here, and I've heard this several times, people saying like, straight rugby players are the gayest rugby players. And that's because they do some of the gayest things, whatever gay is.
I think I've said that before because we've got a couple teammates. One in particular I'm thinking of
I already know who you're thinking
has a
of.
family, a wife and kids, and will be the first to put on a Speedo.
Yes.
The first to like roll around in the mud if that's what's going on. But
The first to like get rid of his underwear and jump and skinny dip and, you know, do crazy stuff.
participate in all the camaraderie that's part of rugby. But
And has the biggest heart.
The biggest heart.
He is so dedicated to his family and his wife, and he's amazing. But
and his team.
and his team, obviously, that goes without saying. And so it's interesting because if you saw from a distance, you would be like, that guy's gay for sure. But that's not the case at all.
Yeah, it's not always the case.
Yeah.
You can't judge a book by its cover.
Jack, have you ever experienced any homophobia at any game or while you were out?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'd say on the pitch in particular, I think a lot of athletes, whether it be rugby or football or whatever, there's a lot of just like homophobic language that is ingrained into team sports.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not the intention is homophobic, some of the language that's being used, especially like when we're in the scrum or if we have like a really hard hit, I've had some of the other teams will use language that is considered homophobic.
The F word, can we just say
The
that?
F word, yeah, the F word. But also, I mean, there's been people who have made kind of like sexual innuendos or anything like that in the scrum, which is the where the props get together and go head to head with the other team. But I think my favorite part about playing rugby is that when you hear those things on the pitch,
It's a challenge.
it's a challenge. You can tackle and beat that person to the ground if they have the ball.
all in the name of sport.
All in the name of the sport. But you don't have to use your words. You can use your body,
Yeah. It's true.
which I think is frustrating because I've also experienced a lot of homophobia just like out in the world. And I think the most frustrating part of that is
Not being able to do anything about it. Yeah.
about it. Yeah. Even, you know, even if you use your words to try and be like, that's not cool, man. I mean, it just doesn't feel the same as pummeling that person into the dirt.
This is true. This is true. You know, everyone thinks that rugby players are these alpha, aggressive, masculine, macho men, for lack of a better description. But in reality, they're not really like that. A lot of them aren't really like that. You see them on the pitch because they're playing a game, and we're hyper focused right on the goal at task, and that's to get that W. And when we go to the third half, which is the drink up, they're a totally different vibe. And you would not believe that it is the same person that you just saw tackling someone to the ground.
So, Ozzy, what more can be... So, like, what else can we do to help support inclusivity in sports and particularly rugby?
I mean, I think what we're doing right now is something that can be done, right? We are trying to get the word out to everyone or to the masses that we exist and we're here.
Yeah.
And so I think it's also the duty of those in our community and our allies to share our stories and, quote, normalize us to other people that may not know that we're here or think that we exist or feel some sort of way about us.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we are no different than anyone else.
Nope.
And so that's one thing that we can do.
What do you think that clubs specifically could do to help support inclusivity?
I don't know. I mean, I think be more active on social media and make sure that they have the right messaging out there and not just say, hey, we are an inclusive team. What are you doing? What makes you inclusive? Because a lot of times, particularly during Pride season, we see these big brands say that they are with us, but then their actions show us otherwise.
Yeah.
And so words can ring very hollow when the actions aren't backing them up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think teams but I think teams can show us how they're being inclusive. What about you, Jack? What do you think? Do you think the fans can do something to help?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, calling out homophobia in stadiums and online. I mean, with the Los Angeles Rebellion Rugby Club, we get so much love and support online, but we also get a lot of hate, and we get a lot of people in the comment section not supporting us and not supporting our movement. So calling that out in stadiums and on the sideline and also online could really help show maybe people who are still in the closet that they're supported and that they're not alone. They're not alone. Exactly.
Yeah. Let's hold people accountable. I think that's at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? Like, let's not let that behavior or that speech be normalized, or let's stop it from being normal or part of the conversations that we have daily, because it's not okay.
If you see something, say something. And I'm talking specifically about homophobia.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to quote Dr. King, in the end, you remember not the words of your enemy, but the silence of your friends. So it's important that we hold ourselves accountable too.
Yeah, for sure. This has been a really fun episode.
It was.
I know we talked a lot about homophobia and working inside sports communities to fight homophobia and transphobia and create a welcoming space for LGBTQ plus individuals. And I just want you to know that you have helped create that space for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
And I know that we also addressed stereotypes that have to do with rugby culture. So thank you for opening your mind and mouth and sharing your thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, well, I have to say, when I first met you, I was like, wow, this guy, super macho. He's always got his hats on. He's always lifting in the gym. He's always looking good. But that's just really not you. I know now that there's so much more, and that there's just a fairy princess.
The high heels and glitter we were talking about?
Waiting to come out.
It's all in here.
So don't be afraid to be yourself. Make sure to tune in next week for another episode of the Gay Rugby Podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and follow us on social media at the Gay Rugby Podcast. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories. We want to hear your questions, and we want to help expand the international inclusive rugby community. So,
yeah, come be part of this community. Talk to us. Give us some ideas and suggestions on what you want to hear about next. And maybe we'll talk about it. I don't know,
So until next time, don't just play the sport.
Change the sport.
Oh, we're doing
We were doing this one.
This one.
Gotta do it again. All right.
No, that was great. I think that's it. People like that stuff. Did you guys drop a comment if you think we should be more real? All right, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Gay Rugby Podcast. If you liked this video, do us a favor and subscribe. Hit that bell to change your preferences to notify all, and that way you'll get a notification every time a new episode comes out, which is going to be every Monday. So share this video with a friend, like, comment, and we appreciate the support. We'll catch you on the rugby pitch. See ya.